Putting swim fins on a cat used to be my favourite episode of 2.5 Men. I don't think it's my favourite now, but it's still pretty brilliant. This is the 5th episode of the 5th season. It's directed by James Widdoes, and as always there will be spoilers from now as I go through the episode and share some thoughts. And as I usually do, I will go through things chronologically. There is a bit of jumping back and forth, certainly as we get into the second half of the episode, so I might be jumping around with my thoughts, but it is still going to be chronological. And it starts off with Alan pointing out that Charlie hasn't had a paying job in months, and Charlie doesn't seem that bothered. In the next scene, Alan tries to confront Berta about this, maybe trying to suggest she takes a pay cut, and she threatens to use his toothbrush to clean up Jake's mess. And she's also not concerned because people like Charlie always land on their feet. And in the same scene, Charlie comes in with some expensive earrings he'd bought for Linda. And I think there's a difference between thinking you'll be okay when you haven't had a paying job and then spending money you shouldn't be spending. So it's not just that Charlie's not concerned, it's that he's not even accepting it. And we're then with Linda and Charlie, and her son walks in, and he's just so adorable. He's called Brandon. He's played by Elijah Michael Lee, and I just think he is such a sweet character. And we then briefly jump to Alan trying to get Judith to ease up on her child support. We're then back with Charlie, and Brandon doesn't want to eat his food. So when Linda goes to make him a hot dog, Charlie comes up with a little song about eating corn, and it makes Brandon smile and puts him in a better mood, and he eats his food, and it's absolutely adorable and really lovely to see Charlie engaging with a child in this way, because I think it's fair to say that Charlie doesn't come across as being father material most of the time, but then we get little moments like this, and we see it with Jake every now and then we get moments like this that makes me think actually there is a father figure in there, and it's absolutely adorable. We then have a moment. I really wanted to put this as the thumbnail, but I try and avoid the funny moments in thumbnails. And Alan goes to Evelyn because he is desperate with the money situation, of course. And initially Evelyn doesn't want to come to the door, but she does eventually. And she opens the door dressed in a schoolgirl outfit. And just the reveal is just absolutely fantastic. And I love the fact that Evelyn just wasn't fazed. Alan was definitely uncomfortable and walked away, but Evelyn wasn't bothered. And it was a brilliant moment. Very, very funny. We're then back with Charlie and Brandon. He's sitting on the floor playing with him, and Brandon needs to go to the toilet, so Charlie has to take him. And initially I thought he's a bit old to be going to the toilet, needing an adult to go to the toilet with him, but apparently he can't undo his trousers, so fair enough. And he decides he doesn't need to go anymore, but Linda calls through that he definitely does, and Charlie comes up with this really elaborate story about how a giant needs to put out the fire in the toilet bowl, and it's so sweet and really creative. And we know Charlie is creative. He's a jingle writer. And it's just so lovely and it works. And I love seeing this side to Charlie. We're then back with Alan, and Alan is signing up for a drug trial where there might be a lot of side effects, but it pays well. So he decides to do it. We're then back in the apartment with Charlie and Brandon. Brandon is staying with Charlie for the day while Linda is at work, and Brandon wants to play the piano. So Charlie decides to let him play for a couple of notes, and then he sings him a song. And what I love about this is that I knew all of the lyrics, and I haven't seen this episode in probably maybe more than a decade. I probably have sought out that clip at some point because I do love this song, but the actual episode itself I haven't seen in over a decade. Maybe I haven't seen the clip in almost as long, but I still knew all of the lyrics, which is a really great sign. And it is, of course, the Who Cut the Cheese song, and it's such a lovely performance with Charlie and Brandon. It is so adorable. And then Linda comes to collect Brandon, and Charlie's too tired to spend the night with her, but he did burn his songs onto a CD for Brandon, which is just the cutest thing ever. I absolutely love this. Alan comes home, presumably having taken the first dose of this medicine for the trial, and he touches his hair, and just the front, like this huge chunk at the front of his hair comes off. Absolutely terrifying. And there's something about the line that he says I just love. He says, "I don't think I'm in the control group." And there's just something about that I thought was fabulous. And then the final scene, Alan and Charlie are on the deck. Alan looks horrendous. And Charlie gets a phone call from Linda's ex-husband, which seems a little bit bizarre. But it turns out he'd listened to the songs that Charlie had put onto the CD for Brandon. Brandon really loved them. And it just so happens that her ex is in the music business, and he asks Charlie if he'd want to record some children's songs for him. Charlie landed on his feet, just as Berta said he would, and Alan is there basically dying. And it's just, the funny thing about this is that Alan, who does everything right, or tries to do everything right, tries to be sensible, and that's the state he's in. Charlie doesn't care, isn't sensible, and he's landed on his feet. And it's irritating because I feel like things like that do happen in real life, but within the context of the episode, it's a really strong way to end it. I love it. It doesn't surprise me that this used to be one of my favourites. At the moment, I don't know which my favourite would be. I think it might be the one with Berta's sister. It's just the scene where they're wrestling on the bed with Charlie in the bed, terrified. I love it. But this one could be a close contender. Really thoroughly enjoyed it. Still love it to this day. Putting swim fins on a cat. It's a really brilliant episode of 2.5 Men. Do I have any personal highlights? I mean, the episode as a whole, I love. The conversation with Berta, I really liked that. And Charlie interacting with Brandon, getting him to eat his corn, coming up with the giant story, obviously playing the piano with him. Absolutely adore those moments. Evelyn appearing in the schoolgirl outfit. The element of surprise there was just fantastic. And I guess the final moment with Alan on the deck, on the lounger, basically convulsing and just looking absolutely horrendous. And then Charlie, of course, getting the phone call and landing on his feet as predicted. It's a solid episode. Absolutely love it. Putting swim fins on a cat is a really fantastic 2.5 Men episode, and I'm pretty confident it's one that I will always really thoroughly enjoy. There's nothing about it that doesn't work. I love seeing this side to Charlie, and I think that's the great thing about the character. There are sides to Charlie that we don't necessarily get to see that often, but help to make him a more well-rounded and I guess believable individual. And in general, it's just a pretty fantastic episode.